Welcome to Empirical Pea Pod. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. If you could please subscribe, follow, share, like, comment, whatever the hell happens when we do these things. I'm your host, Tim Day. Let's get to the show. We'll check it in post.
I mean, you know I can remove that, right?
Yeah, I know you can. I wish there was a way to have you just run all the audio and editing in general and somehow not take up your time.
Well, I mean, it doesn't take as much time as you. I've been cutting music for Kristen, like she's teaching dance at the camp.
Yeah.
You know, so she'll be like, hey, can you have, this song, this time frame, this song, this time frame, and I blend them all together seamlessly. And I mean, I do it in less than 10 minutes.
Yeah, so that's not too bad.
No.
All right. Well, let's get her going. I'm here with Dave Hughes.
Yes, sir.
Now, this is another fun one because you are not in our circle of friends, actually.
I'm not. I know a lot of the names.
Yeah, and well, there's been shows and stuff throughout the years, and I know you've done our albums. You even played with us for the last year. Was it 2 years?
Oh man, I think the first one was on my birthday at was it North Beach? What was that place called?
There was a place called North Beach.
Yeah, I played. It was on my birthday.
Really? Wasn't your birthday at the
23rd? It was just this past Sunday.
Yeah, but didn't we play the Double Door?
The Double Door was, I think, in September, October.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Yeah, that was, I think, in 2011. But the first time I played with you guys, I only played 2 songs. I think I played 57 and I think it was before you guys even wrote the new material, maybe.
Probably. I don't know. It was so long ago.
Actually, something popped up on my. I don't go on Facebook much, but I get those memories thing.
So do I. I never post them, but I see them.
13 years.
Yeah.
One of them was just. I think it was. I don't know if it was it wasn't the Double Door one, but maybe. Oh no, it would have been my birthday one.
Yeah,
because it was 2010.
Happened. Yeah, North Beach.
Yeah. 13 years.
Yeah, well, we haven't. Our last show was 13 years ago in September.
Dude, that's just.
It's weird.
Time flies.
Time does fly, and also at this point, you, and Guy kept playing off and on since then.
Yeah.
And it's probably been a year now since we've even jammed.
Yeah. The funny thing is I talked to Randy recently, and for whatever reason, possibly when we first worked together, you guys were younger than me, not by much, but enough to where I felt like an adult and you guys were kids.
Yeah, because I always point that out too.
You know what I mean?
I still remember the first time, because when we were still just becoming friends, you had made a comment where because I was like, "You're such an adult." And you're like, "Yeah, I don't wear funny sayings on my shirt."
So I remember when you guys came into the studio and Randy came in, and he came hungover, sunglasses on. I'm like, what the fuck? Who is this rock star?
That's my favorite part because Randy's the tamest one.
Yeah, but he didn't give me the first impression illusion that he was. I thought he was the prima donna. Oh, here we go. But
I wish he was like that for real, where he just showed up everywhere hungover. Everybody will work at his schedule.
But my mindset is still set to that. So I can't when I talked to Randy and I told him I was having a birthday and turning 45, and I'm like, what are you 33? He's like, dude, no. I'm like,
we're all 40.
40. I'm like, see, I can't accept that. It doesn't feel right.
Well, because that was 2008.
Yeah.
So those 5 years felt huge.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't matter.
No, when you're 23 and someone's 28, that's a much bigger difference than when someone's 45 and you're 41 or whatever the case. You know what I mean?
32 to 38 seems huge also.
Yeah.
But now it does. Now we're just all old and gross, so it doesn't matter. But what I'd still like to follow a similar format to the other shows and kind of talk about your journey, because you still have a remarkable, amazing journey, and plus you've done actually a lot in music in general. So let's start there.
Okay.
How did you get into music?
Man, so
because you're also a drummer.
I am. Yeah.
I mean, and then you play guitar for us, and then me, you, and Guy, you
do drums. Yeah. So I guess the way I always put it is I can hold my own at each of the instruments, but I'm not exceptionally great at any of them.
That's how I feel about my life. Like I can hold my own in most of it, but.
But would you rather be a jack of all trades or just exceptionally good at just one thing? I'd rather be a jack of all trades. Honestly.
I think it depends on the thing, honestly, because like I consider myself just okay at bass, and that was back when I was good. Now I'm probably awful.
Nah.
At least out of practice, like take me a little bit, but. I'd rather be really good at one instrument, maybe. Mm-hmm. Not even that feels wrong when I say it out loud. Just
well, you were very like, passionate about like the bass. I was never passionate about any instrument, so I was heavily into sports as a kid. I skateboarded, I played soccer, like, pretty religiously, football, everything, and I dabbled in music. Some of my friends had drum sets or guitars sitting around or whatever. And I hurt my foot really bad, and in my downtime, I had this really crappy guitar laying around my bedroom that I tinkered with, but didn't play with that much. Then, I got into some trouble, we'll just say, when I was like 14. My parents decided to ground me, but thank God they weren't very technically savvy. So they left Nirvana's Nevermind CD in my CD player because they didn't know how to work it.
Right.
So I started putting headphones on, and I kind of realized that I was just able to kind of just play along with it, like pick it up by ear. I didn't know jack shit about notes or scales or anything. So a friend of mine was forming a band, and I was kind of like, I'll play whatever. He's like, you want to play bass? And I never played bass before, but at that point I was okay at guitar. And I picked up bass pretty good, and we had a drummer in our band who was notorious for being like a no-show at our practices. He was really good. So if he didn't show up, I would go behind the kit. And again, I figured out like, oh, I can play. Like, again, not like great, but I could hold my own through most of our songs and whatnot. And then we were lucky enough to, at the age of like 15, I think, the two guys in the band who were the quote-unquote founders of the band, they both had good jobs as like 15-year-olds and had money, so we got to go to a studio. Wow. And I was only like, it was right before my 15th birthday, so we were young. And like I fell in love with the process. I'm like, how cool is this? Now this is like back in like DAT days, so digital audio tape, so not quite analog, not quite like Pro Tools. And
using like a 4-track or anything.
It was in a guy's basement, but we thought
those
it was.
Things always weirded me out because they don't make any sense.
Yeah, they don't.
Like it's 4 tracks, but like they record them on weird spots in the tape,
right?
And then you have to somehow put it all together. I do not miss those days.
Yeah, no, not at all. But we did like 4 or 5 songs, like, and we took it seriously. Like we rehearsed, we played to a click, we nailed it.
Did you pick that up naturally too? Like, because you said you kind of were like a duck to water in a sense with drums, but like the crux is really timing. Like Jay's impeccable because he went to lessons first, so I feel like he was built into that immediately. Did you just pick up natural rhythm and time like that?
Yeah, and giving lessons, I jammed with that kid Brett, who was amazing. It's the thing that I figured out when giving lessons, and I'm not saying this applies to every kid, but it's kind of like you either have it or you don't.
Right.
In other words, if any kid practices enough, they can develop skills to where they can play scales and they're going to sound good. But I'm talking about that thing, like when you put 2 people in a room like you and Jay, where like you guys lock in and like you just pick up on things. Like I had that. Like in other words, I was really good at, I could play drums to a click just naturally on time and not fall off. Same with guitar. Like my timing and everything, I just picked up really well to it. And again, I never got like hardcore into like solos or when I play drums, I don't do crazy like jazz related fills or.
It's just like this amazing, like just a solid rock beat.
Yeah,
which is like the backbone of it. I like it. Like obviously, I love what Jay does.
Sure, Jay's incredible.
But Jay and I can flash together. But the way that you play is so solid, I can literally do whatever I want in and around that.
And it's interesting, not skipping ahead too far, but that's pretty much what happened in high school. But the defining moment in terms of like how I got into recording, and this brings us kind of full circle to Eric in the studio down in Bloomington.
I was gonna say, did you already know Eric?
So I was in college. At that point, I had played in a couple of bands.
And did you go to?
I went to Illinois State
for engineering.
Well, yeah. So this is before I even went to school for engineering. I was at Illinois State getting my undergrad degree.
Okay, nice.
And this was 98, 99, right around the time. I mean, the Foo Fighters had been around for a couple of years, and I was never a big Foo Fighters fan, but I was obviously a very big Nirvana fan.
Right.
And this is also kind of pre-internet and stuff, so it was harder to come across news, but I finally came across an article that basically talked about how he did all the instruments by himself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is awesome.
That is awesome.
Like, how can I do that?
I mean, Prince, Stevie Wonder, people are already...
I mean, nowadays you're more aware of it, but like
Yeah.
some people don't realize like how many people like are multi-instrumentalists
Yeah.
and crazy. So I was talking to my roommate at the time. I'm like, hey man, I really think it. So I wrote 2 songs. I can't sing with jack shit. So unfortunately I had to leave vocals out of it. But I had guitar parts written. I had like specific bass parts written. I had a drum beat in my head that I basically like played on a keyboard that I had.
Yeah.
Just so I didn't go into it blind. I didn't want to. I'm not quite good enough as a drummer just to like wing it. I have to have a general idea what I'm going to play. So I basically went into practically the Yellow Pages at the time, looked for a studio. There was this studio in Normal, Illinois, which is right there. And then I booked 4 hours with them, told him, hey, I'm going to come in with just a guitar. He had a drum set, he had a bass, he had everything I needed. And I remember pulling up. And if you remember, he's in that like little building.
Yeah.
And shout out to Eclipse Studios, Eric Nelson.
So we recorded our last album.
Yeah, I get there, and this is me being a little bit vain and stuff, being like, what is this?
This isn't a real studio.
Well, I hadn't been inside yet.
Yeah.
But I was just from the outside. I was like, what? This looks like a little like...
It's very unassuming.
It's in an industrial park,
Yeah.
and it's tiny. So... But and again, this is before the years of like Google reviews, so I don't know if he's good at what he does or whatever.
Yeah.
I just knew it was cheap, and
I believe
he had
Mudvayne
time.
did their first album
They
there.
did. I don't know if they did it at that studio, but they did it with him because he had a place in Peoria, I believe.
That's right.
So I get in there, and then I'm a little bit more stoked about it. I'm like, okay, like I see some legit gear, and like it has that studio smell to it.
Yeah.
Like the equipment running, and and dude, like. I did the songs, and then that's when I learned that he's like just a musical genius, and he's like, hey, you want some piano on this? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then like 2 seconds later, he's got this like beautifully written piano part, and I'm like, what the hell?
He did that even on our last album
Yep.
when we were there, where like doesn't ask any questions. It's just like, oh yeah, and like he knows the key, he knows the progression.
Yeah, he just does
He's
it.
insane. I couldn't imagine being that good at anything.
And he's so grounded about it too, and like he's found a niche. And I mean, without going on a whole tangent about him, like he went out to LA and tried to do bigger things, which he was more than capable of doing. But I think he realized that like it's about him. People don't go to his studio for a studio; they go for him.
Right.
But so I finished those songs. I was like blown away, not necessarily at my song or my performance, but like, wow, that's me
what
playing.
What it turns into is insane.
Yeah, it's like that's me playing all the instruments. And and during the process, he was very like open to me like being a fly on the wall and asking questions like, so what are you doing? And like then he kind of helped me, or I should say allowed me to help him play almost like an assistant engineer role in it, because I was really interested. So I ended up going back to him to do an album with my buddy Nathan, and then me and my friend Giovanni did an album with him when I was actually in full. And so I decided, I got my undergraduate degree, I had a job, paid decent, and I was like, this is it? Like, this is life? Like, and I was like, I'm only 23, so I'm going to talked to my parents. I said, listen, I'm thinking about like attending an audio, engineering school. I had some money saved up. So I moved to Florida. I did that. And I in hindsight, I kind of knew like maybe it wasn't going to like turn into like my life career.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to do something outside the box, something different. And I also never did I did well in school, enough to get by. But I think it was also important for me because it gave me like a self-confidence boost because, the classes weren't a joke. Like some people be like audio engineering school, but like there was a lot of math classes. Like there was a lot of, you did a different, like you did labs and classes, and it ran around the clock because it was an accelerated course for you to get your degree. So like you were like, you know, waking up at 1 in the morning to go to a lab from 2 to 4 in the morning. And
I also feel like that's like you're also like you're plugging into a structure there, but that is a forever thing because it's constantly evolving.
Yeah,
technology's changing and everything. Like so, it's not just if you want to stay relevant, you've got to grow with that constantly.
Absolutely. I mean, technology is moving at unbelievable. I mean, even looking back to when I was at Full Sail, which is oh my gosh, like 20 years now. I mean, a lot of the recording technology anyway still exists, but at the same time, so much of it has changed. But that was that was a fantastic experience in more ways than one. Not only did it allow me to like study something I was genuinely interested in, and I got really good grades, and it kind of reaffirmed me in like, hey, you know, I'm not as dumb as I thought I was. Like, and I met some cool people from like not only across like the country, but there were international students. And growing up in Naperville and going to school at Illinois State, which is basically just down the road, it opened my eyes to how big the world is.
Right.
You know,
it's funny to think of like Illinois State doing that, but like it's really for a lot of people, college is the first time you see like more of a melting pot, especially being from a small town. Because where'd you grow up at?
Naperville. Yeah. So I mean, Illinois State, I mean, is an hour and a half away. You know what I mean? So going to Florida was just one of those things where it was just eye-opening. And I kind of knew I wasn't going to stay. I liked it. It was definitely cool, like playing beach volleyball on like Thanksgiving and, you know, skipping a couple of winters. But I found myself kind of knowing I was going to come back home, you know. My parents were here, and obviously my friends were all here, and you know. But it was an awesome experience. So I came back, and I was able to do the music thing for a while. I got a gig at this time it was called Studio Chicago. They're no longer in business. I forget who's there now, but at first I was like an assistant, basically like paid hardly anything. But I got to work on some cool sessions like. I got to work a session with a saxophone player named Mars Williams, who's part of the Psychedelic Furs.
Oh, nice.
And that was cool. I was in the studio at the same time that Frank Black from the Pixies. They were in town to do. It was right when the Pixies had reformed, and they were doing like one of their first reunion shows at either the Aragon or something. But he was in the studio working on like the Frank Black and the Catholic stuff, which is like his side kind of project that he does. So that was cool. But I mean, honestly, one of the coolest sessions I ever did at the studio was a church choir.
Really?
Mainly just because, like, we threw up, like, 5 or 6 mics in the room, and that's it.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you pick up, because you'd think you just have, not maybe a center mic, but at least 3 up front, and then you'd have them in a booth still, right?
No, we had them in a big live room.
Oh, really?
They were like,
and then would you have mics around the room then for the acoustics bouncing off the walls?
Yeah, it didn't take many, man. It took like 4 or 5 mics, and like, but the sound that these women generated was like, it was so angelic, and like the harmonies, and like it didn't require much mixing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you could basically leave it alone. I mean, maybe a few EQ tweaks, maybe a tad reverb, but other than that, you didn't have to do much. But I stuck with it for a while, and it just got to the point where I realized, like, man, if I'm going to give this thing like my all, I'm going to have to devote weekends, holidays, friends' birthdays, everything to make this happen.
Kind of an all-the-time job.
Yeah, and it also, I kind of, looking back on it, maybe it was like a silver lining, but technology was changing around this time. We're talking like 2004, 2005, so like cell phones are slowly becoming smartphones, and Pro Tools was really coming up, and I'm just started thinking about it. I'm like, man, is this, even if I invest myself in this, is this going to exist in 10 years? I don't know. And I'm certainly glad I mean, who knows? I could have made a name for myself and went on to do cool things, but at the same time, I knew the life I eventually wanted, wasn't going to mix well with that lifestyle. Someone like Eric Nelson, who we just talked about, like, man, like, he has a great marriage. He's got kids. He has grandkids now, and like, you know, that he puts in some serious hours, you know, late nights, and like, I implore him for it, but I just don't think it's something I could do. So I had a bachelor's degree to fall back on, and I came across a job in logistics, which I knew nothing about.
Right.
Like, I remember my first interview, and the guy's like, "So if I asked you what LTL stood for, could you tell me?" I was like, "Nope." Hired me anyways. You know, hourly job. It was what I call kind of like a career kickoff job, you know, entry level. You know, he probably figured, well, he was college educated, so maybe he can learn it, which is why they require, you know, a college education. They figure somehow if you went to college, you could learn better, which I think is not true. Because, you know, I hate seeing people denied the opportunity to, you know, move in their career just because they don't have a degree, especially when you're experienced.
It's absurd. I think we're in the infancy now of that evolving, or at least being talked about finally. Yeah. So I think in, you know, over the next 20 years, it'll look very different.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting a job like, you know, when you're younger, I can understand a little bit more where it has that like reassurance to people that like, okay, this person set forth to like complete something and they stayed on task, and like dependability, however you want to call it. And obviously, if it's a specialty thing, if you're a doctor or a lawyer or something, obviously, like, you need continuing education and stuff.
Sure, but there's a lot of absurdity. Like, I did project management for a year, but I don't have enough of an education to go and get a new job because one person took a chance on me.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like there's that movie with Michael J. Fox, Secret of My Success. You ever seen it? It's a great movie. But for any movie buffs out there, it's a sleeper hit. I love MJ. But he's like, you know, he can't get a job because he doesn't have the experience, but how's he supposed to get the experience if he can't get the job? Like, kind of thing. It's like that loop. So, but I got the job. It was always meant to be kind of just something to keep a paycheck in my pocket. I was at a Christmas party for the company. I had every intention of like leaving once I found something else. And I started talking to this guy. I don't remember his name, but he was like a senior executive for the company. And we started chatting, and he's like, you know, what's your background in? I said, like, you know, marketing, but analytics, you know. And he's like, well, there's a good possibility our company is going to be merging with our sister company, which is going to bring a lot of opportunity, especially like in your field, like in analytics. So I was like, okay. So I stuck around, and sure enough, they merged. I was one of the first people to move over into a logistics analyst job, and that was 2005. I ended up being with that company until 2017.
Wow.
And made a jump in 2017 to the company I'm with now. Kind of got recruited by a former colleague of mine who I worked at the same company with, and they had a new acquisition and some growth opportunity, and it was just the right time to do it. And so, I mean, here we are, almost 20 years I've been in the industry.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that's awesome. It actually brings up a really good point, too, that I really enjoy, is because I feel like society really pushes this idea of, like, live to work. Mm-hmm. And there's not a job that I'm, like, excited about that I'd be like, oh, this is my dream, and I can enjoy this 100% of the time, all the time. Like, I just want to work to get paid, and then do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what you're talking about, is like, I'm sure analytics in logistics is not your dream, but it allows you to afford the life to pursue your passions and, you know, to be with the family and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, you know, at the same time though, I'm lucky enough to where I do enjoy. So I would say my previous job was a lot more of a paycheck, we'll just say.
Yeah.
I worked from home. It was very laid back. This job, this company I'm with now, I actually like really enjoy it just because it's challenging. I get to travel, you know, not too crazy to where I'm gone for too long. You know, and logistics and, you know, transportation, supply chain, at the end of the day, it's not the sexiest, you know, work field to be in, but it's a stable one. Now more than ever with e-commerce, and, you know, it's one that's not going away. you know, and it's evolving, and it presents its challenges and stuff, but you know, I like it. You know, I think back like, man, what if I was still, you know, working at a studio on Saturday nights until 2 a.m. Like, I don't know.
Well, my life would be different. That's all.
My dream job, like, if I could like do anything audio related, it would be doing music, like picking the music and mixing it and choosing the scenes for movie trailers.
That would be really fun, actually.
Yeah. Like watching the movie.
Yeah.
And then, because I love movies, not just sound, but I love movies. Watching the movie and saying, how do you tell a 3-minute story without telling the story, but enough to get the people interested? And let's be honest, music plays a pivotal role in movies. Yeah. You remove any song from any key scene of any movie, and it changes drastically.
It's true, 100%. And actually, I got a little taste of that even with this show because I cut a trailer. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you ever listened to the trailer for this before the episodes started dropping. I had 4 episodes in the bank, and so I had to go through it, and I just grabbed a couple of sound bites to make a 30-second thing, and then just some free-range music to throw behind, which is what the intro and outro are now, royalty-free stuff. And I was like, because I got a lot of comments like, this trailer is really good and put together well. And I was like, I'm the asshole who threw it together. It wasn't, it was fun, like to try to make it make sense, to take this 4 hours of content and boil it down to 30 seconds.
Right. It's fun, man. Like, you talking about being a nerd. A few years ago, when now I'm not like a huge like Star Wars like fan, but when the trailer came out for, what was the first one in 2015, Force Awakens?
Yeah.
The trailer music was like powerful.
Yeah.
Like
John Williams.
Right. Like it wasn't too Star Warsy because it didn't do too many callbacks to like the original like Star Wars theme. Like it had enough to where it was recognizable.
Yeah.
But it was super powerful, and I'm like, I bet you this is one of those scores that you could put to anything and it's going to make it powerful. So, being the nerd I am, I love The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
So, I ripped The Shawshank Redemption from DVD into my computer, cut my own trailer using the Force Awakens music to it, and I'm not going to lie to you, man. Like, it turned out awesome.
You actually sent me that.
Did I send it to you?
Yeah, because I've seen it, and it does.
Was it as good as I think it was?
It is. It's insane how well it works.
It does,
because it's very it's awesome. What you should do is go back to the Phantom Menace. Mm-hmm. Duel of the Fates is one of the greatest pieces of music ever.
Okay,
like
challenge.
It helps a lot because of like what's happening there and the story behind it. But Duel of the Fates is such a brilliant piece of music, and it's used so well. There's more nuance to it than what's happening on screen. It's all of like what's not being said that's weighing if you're a Star Wars nerd. Okay. Like if you're just casually watching it, you're not going to get any of it, but it still stands up as just an amazing piece on its own. You should definitely look into
challenge accepted. I will do something like that. And you know, ties into like, you ever think of something, and it doesn't have to be music related necessarily, and you think, I got it, I just came up with the most unique idea and it's awesome, and then you find out that somebody already came up with it and you're like, what the hell. So again, not a huge fan of the band, but The Used has a song called The Bird and the Worm, and the instrumental version is epic. I mean, it's fine with the vocals too, but the instrumental version, guitar, drums, orchestra, like hits, like it's a big like kind of reason I went that route with Evolution. Like I was inspired very much by that song with layering it with those timpanis and those strings in the chorus just to like make it like really epic. Yeah. Which by the way, I love listening to, no disrespect, Randy, I love your voice, but I love listening to that song instrumental. Yeah. Like that chorus is just like so like huge.
It's actually funny you mentioned that. Also, no disrespect to Randy.
Love you, Randy.
But when I started this podcast, I was like, my first thought was I already have music that I've written that I should be able to use. And then I was like, if I could get that track without vocals, because I don't want to have music with vocals. I feel like that's too distracting. But I'd love for my solo episodes to do an underlayer of just instrumental, just to kind of keep it, moving, and so it's not just dead air with one person.
Yeah.
And I was like, that song would be perfect for that.
Yeah, so I come to find out that they used the song in the trailer for like the remake of Clash of the Titans or some shit, and
really?
I was like, what?
Yeah.
So disappointed.
Yeah.
It would have been nice. So, but anyways, so that, that pretty much brings me up to around the time I met you guys.
So that was 2005.
Yep.
And I think 2008 is when we recorded our second album.
Yeah.
And you were working at I'm air quoting, studio.
Yep. Out of a basement. First time I met you guys. And, without going like, that could be a whole episode in itself, but it turned out really well considering how unprepared all of us probably were. It was one of my first times really spearheading like someone's album like on their own. But
compared to how prepared we were for the last album, that is insane that album was ever recorded.
Yeah, I mean, it turned out fairly good. And like when we did the second one, The Angel on the Marble, it's out there somewhere. Everybody go listen to it. It's really good. I was like, well, if we're gonna do this, like, let's do it. Like I had the time. I didn't have kids or anything, so I was like, let's really like go for it. So, we did pre-production. I had Randy come over and like we did vocal comps in my freaking closet at the townhouse. And I love the way we did it, like, because you and Jay lock in so well with each other.
Also, what you were saying earlier about like those magic moments when we recorded, we did it on the second album also, but when we did Angel on the Marble, which is our third album, him and I record together, and which is not usually done. I mean, it can be done, but like. Usually you'd have the drums go first, but we knocked both of them out in one weekend.
Yep.
And what I love about that is because Jay and I play different every time we play a song.
Yeah.
And there's so much nuance that made it onto the album that wasn't written that way that I absolutely love. Because even when we play it live, like you play with us, we tweak things on the fly. Sure. Not enough to ruin everybody else's experience.
Right.
But just because we're free flowers.
Right. Well, the great thing about it too was like, I love the approach that we took in the sense that it was important for me to like, because I like genuinely thought like you guys are like really good, and the songs like had such potential. I'm like, God, we gotta like make this as great as possible. And like I knew we didn't have like a huge budget or anything like that, because we spend a lot of time like at my townhouse doing shit. You know what I mean? And I love that we treated each part as like its own part, meaning like with your bass, remember we got that bass emulator out.
Yep.
Dude, we used a different tone and sound for every song.
It was very different, and you'll be able to speak to this too because just my own self-awareness, like if you would have when you first met me versus to what happened after to that album, like I was very stubborn in the beginning. I wanted it to be a certain way. Yep. I had a lot of ownership to at least my piece of this, and I did not want to bend or hear anything. And then I was, luckily I evolved and was like, okay, this makes sense. Everybody wants it to be as good as it possibly can. Let's try it. And then, we brought a couple of different basses. You're right. We did a lot of layering, like a ton of, when I still have the drum and bass stuff, like I listen to like the triplets were something that was done on the fly in that one song. I don't remember the names of any of the songs anymore. But like I did the triplets in that one song, and you can hear them so well. You can't hear them on the album, but I know they're there. And I'm like, I can't even believe I played that. Like, there's no way that that's even possible.
Yeah, no, it turned out great. And what's great is like, same thing we did like with guys, and you guys were, to your point about like the first or second, however you want to term it, the first one we did together, which was your second. You're being a little bit more like stubborn, wanting the ownership. You guys, without really calling me it, you guys let me kind of play the role of producer, which I had never really done. And I mean, there were, I think the one guitar part on like Infectious, that was my idea to add with the octave and everything. And again, it was so cool because Guy wasn't like, nah, this is my part. Like, he was like, yeah, dude, cool. When we got in with, and the important thing that I want to do with Randy too is like, I wanted to make sure Randy got his time because like, a lot of time was spent on guitars and bass and drums. And Randy did a lot of the vocals at my townhouse, actually.
Yeah.
If you remember, to help save money, Eric sent me home with like his like really nice like $2,000 Sony mic.
Yeah.
And his whatever you call it, drive for it, and we did most of it. So, but when we went back, Eric really went out of his way to like help him, because I remember when we were doing Infectious, and he's like, let's try this for like harmonies, right? And Randy did one, and we're all like in the room looking at each other like, that sounds horrible. But when he put them together, it was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, because in our minds, a harmony is like just going like from one octave to the next octave.
Right.
But in Eric's mind, who's like a musical genius, it's not about just going from like a C1 to a C2. There's notes in between that go with each other.
Yeah.
And like, dude, I remember hearing that for the first time, and it was just like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And it turned out, I mean, we didn't even have to spend that much time mixing it.
Yeah. I mean, well, we were so dialed in, like, just on our own and at your house, we recorded every song. We drilled it so.
Oh, you and Jay knocked most of the songs out in one take.
Yeah. Well, that's a testament to how good Jay is. I just keep up with him.
Yeah. Well, no, you guys just, you have that thing I was talking about. Like, you just locked in.
It's weird now because like I went and saw him in Colorado for a couple months a few years ago, and I brought the Eden out there. Mm-hmm. And him and I hadn't played in probably 10 years. It just ripped it apart.
Yeah.
Like nothing, no time had passed. There's a couple of guys out there, Orca, damn it, I feel like an asshole. I forgot buddy's name. But he's an amazing songwriter also. What a dick I am. But they showed me a couple of their songs, and like they fell in love with the bass parts I threw in. And like we're just amazed at what Jay and I could do.
Yeah, did you just do it? And like, Guy then did it basically. He had a weekend to himself. Yeah. But we layered the shit out of his guitars, which ultimately I love that we did, because that's what brings us to
Mark.
Basically.
His name is Mark.
Mark.
Sorry.
Okay. There you go, Mark. We didn't forget about you. When you guys got the chance to play the double door, which was huge, like. The album sounded so great, but guys like, well, dude, how in the hell are we gonna make it sound like that live? Like, we can't afford like to like haul a Pro Tools around with us playing the backing tracks, and that's
that's the hill I would have died on.
Yeah,
I don't like the.
That's when that's when you guys were like, you want to play guitar?
Yeah,
and I was like, me. And what I didn't think about, I was like, well, I mean, they have a point. I probably know these songs better than them at this point, because when you mix and stuff, it's the same song over and over. Right. So. But I mean, I took it pretty serious. I mean, I remember spending nights in my loft just playing along with it on my guitar, and like, I mean, I played I played all of Guy's basic like.
So it was just all rhythm
power chord parts.
Yeah. We're not exciting to look at on stage, so we're all just standing there like a bunch of.
No, but it was. I'm glad I was able to do it, because it really like allowed Guy to like focus on like the awesome parts that he wrote, like the lead parts, with still having that like fill. In there to like give it like a little bit broad shoulders, you know what I mean? Yeah,
because usually I would fill like those parts out, but it loses something.
Yeah.
That it took me a long time to understand. What it was losing, because I've always been a bit of a purist.
Yeah.
Which is just a fancy word of saying asshole.
No. Organic, man. That's the new word.
Organic. That's it.
No, but it was awesome, because the best part of this story is that the that spider. Remember the spider in the studio? I still have a picture of. There was this massive fucking spider that we almost died when there was that domestic dispute at the Motel 6. I don't remember that.
I don't remember that. So the first time we went down there, me and Jay stayed at my cousin's, because my cousin lives in Congerville, which we thought was closer until we drove there.
Yeah, I forget which time it was. There was one time where we all stayed at like the Motel 6, and then it was the next time that I was like, we're not doing that again. And then I got the room at like the Marriott or whatever. But
I'd say I remember probably keeping everybody up.
Yeah, no. So we do all this. Like, the album is awesome. It sounds fucking killer. You guys get a show at the Double Door. We play it, and then what happens? You guys fucking break up. Well, what the shit?
So there's a caveat to that, and here's where we can no disrespect. full disrespect this time. Right after we finished the album, before, like, as we were building to the double door, Randy's like, I'm gonna move to California.
Yeah. Thanks, Randy.
Well, he ruins everything.
Jesus, Randy.
No, but I think it was what it was. It was the best time, like, because once he decided that, then Jay decided also, like,
yeah, because he went out to San Diego for a while.
Yeah. There was also more. There was actually some turmoil at the time also that I couldn't even specify at this point because I don't remember.
Right.
I just remember, like, we've always been in love, but there was still, like, you got four egos. You're gonna bump heads once in a while.
I mean, I think you guys have decent content for, like, a VH1, like, Where Are They Now show or something like that.
Maybe if they did a whole Where Are They Now Oswego episode, because then we'd cover a whole episode.
But I think it's still, all joking aside, I think it's something you guys could look back on and be proud of, because, like, I genuinely, no bullshit, like, do from time to time listen to it from start to finish, and even I'll throw my hand there and be like, dude, I'm proud of myself as well. Like, it turned out really good.
I agree. Everybody that has ever heard it is like, oh, this is like a real album.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's got proper crazy volume, and
it's mixed really well. It's performed really well. But I'm always, like I said, I love it, and I'm proud of it, and it means a lot to me. But I'm always forward thinking, because after that, well, actually, I want to talk about a little bit before that first, because that was 2010. But before that, you had recorded a few albums on your own or with past groups. I want to talk about those and that process.
Yeah. So, it was pretty much the same setup with both my one buddy Nathan, who I had kind of, like, not really played in a band with him, but we'd always jam together. And then
is that the Error Side of Caution? That's the only thing I can remember.
No, so the other side of Caution would have been John. So he was the guy who was in the first band I was in high school when I played bass and would tinker on drums. He's still active. He still plays. And then Giovanni, who him and I would, like, again, kind of just jam together. So never really, like,
we played a show with you guys.
We did. So
I don't even know the name of that band.
I think we called ourselves There and Back, but we were never, like, a band. But we came up with a name because we were going to do an album. And the really interesting thing about that album, and again, it's something I look back on and have so much more, like, proudness, or however you want to term it, for the process was.
I think they call it pride.
Pride, there you go. Proudness, prideness. I was living in Florida, going to school for the audio engineering. He was here in Naperville. Now, again, this is 2003-ish, so this is, like, before all the fancy technology. I would record some songs on, like, piece of shit recorder, send them to him. He would do the same, send them to me. And then I would sit on my keyboard that had, like, drum sounds on it and come up with a drum. He wrote 5 songs, I wrote 5 songs. I wrote the lyrics for my 5 songs, he wrote the lyrics for his 5 songs. Wow. But our songs were different, but blended well on the album. Like, you can maybe listen and be like, that's totally a Dave song. Yeah, right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I come back home for what was considered, like, the equivalent of spring break for this school. We rehearsed in my dad's garage for 4 days, went down to Eric, recorded it in 2.
Wow.
So on my songs that I wrote, I did the drums, bass, and guitars. And there was a song called To Wear a Crown that Eric, of course, did the lead parts for. Because, like, there was a lead part written, and then, like, we were trying, and then he's like, well, let me see. And of course, he just does it in, like, 10 seconds. And I'm like, yeah, that figures. And then on Gio's songs that he wrote, he did the guitars, the vocals. I think maybe on a couple he did bass, and then I did drums and or bass and drums. And we mixed it, and, like, I can't say we really, like, released it. Really, we sold it to some friends and got it out there. But again, like, for the fact that we basically did this remotely and remotely in 2003 remote terms.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's pretty amazing because I mean I think it holds up to this day. It sounds really good. And then we had a chance to play a couple of shows. We played one at Frankie's Blue Room, I think maybe in like 2005. And then we went kind of domicile for a while, and then we decided to play that other show at Rizzo's, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got one of our buddies who played bass, and just he learned the songs and did a couple covers. You guys came up and did some with us, so that was a fun night.
Yeah, that was a fun night. I didn't know that, because that's a family business for Gio, isn't it?
So Rizzo's, the bar was owned by a different Rizzo, I guess, a guy named Chuck, but he does own his own hair salon.
Yeah, his hair salon's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
too.
shout out to hair salon.
Yeah, he's still playing too, because I remember just last year he sent out a mass text to try to get a bunch of people over.
Yep, he still does like a lot of recording and stuff on his own, and like we try to get together, but obviously, I'm with travel and work and stuff, it's hard for me to get over there. I wish I could more, but him and I are actually going to see Royal Blood in September. I'm super excited about that. And then the album that I did with my buddy Nathan was very similar. So we did that, I think it was 2001. So it was like 2 years before me and Gio. And similar setup. We went over to my parents' house. We wrote Nathan was a great songwriter, very like rock blues. And what was cool about my drums for those songs is the drums for every song were like their own part. It was like a guitar part. Yeah. It was very specific. Like, okay, I do this on the toms, or I do this, like rather than just like rocking out and playing like a straight up beat. Same thing. Yeah, we went there and recorded it in like 2 days. So I recorded 3 times with Eric in 3 years, and then kind of didn't do much with anything. And then when I started working with you guys, that's when I'm like, I got just the guy. Let's go see him, and I'm glad we did. And I still, he's still going strong, man.
He's doing amazing things down there. Also, he's got so many different kinds of projects. Like, it's really cool.
He is, but people go, like I said, people go for him.
Yeah,
he's just like, he's easygoing. He can make your song sound so much better.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to kind of especially like when you're in a band sometimes. Especially when you're young, like as you grow, hopefully you evolve, but you consider it your thing. Like for our band, we each just did what we did, and so you feel that ownership to that, and it's tight. Mm-hmm. So like, because then when you came in, and you can do anything that the rest of us can do, except for Randy.
Right, of course, that'd be close.
Yeah, but you can play guitar, you can play bass, you can play drums, and you can write them all coherently, and because all the songs you write, because then years later we started working on your songs, are commercial friendly.
Very.
And I don't mean that as an insult by any means.
Not at all.
But they're structured in such a way that they make sense. They're easy to listen to, and they're good.
Catchy, yeah.
Yeah, they're catchy.
I'm all about. I mean, there's a couple of songs that I wrote that in my head have complexities to them, but like when I listen to the parts like you and Jay, like your guys' parts like are very complex in the way like. You know what I mean? Like Jay, like every one of those songs, like Jay had like a part.
Yeah.
It was very specific.
He almost writes lead drums.
Exactly. No, that's the best way to do it. Or even like your bass, like, if you took like my drums from like one of the songs I play, it's going to take you a good 5-10 seconds to figure out what song I'm playing. Because it's probably just do. But I could take any of your bass songs from any of the songs or any of his drum parts and within 3 seconds know exactly what song it is.
So if we fast forward then from we're kind of we're mementoing this, taking pieces and plugging them in.
I love it.
After our last album in 2010, and then Randy telling us he hates us, and then Jay following suit and hating us. Me, you, and Guy continued to make. Well, it was a couple years. I think your wedding. We came together at your wedding, and that's when we're like, we should kick some stuff around.
Yeah.
And we actually did, because it's the musician's curse. Anytime you see another musician, it's like, oh, we should do some stuff.
Totally.
And then you don't.
Yeah. But then it took a while, but we finally did. And it was cool because it was like, there was a familiar feeling, but it was totally different.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like we all got to kind of like maybe do something a little bit different we wouldn't have done in like our other bands. You like, because from my standpoint, I had been doing so many things on my own. Like I was playing drums to my own bass parts, which weren't really bass parts. It was just following along the guitar.
Right.
So playing with you was cool because it's like, okay, well, he's playing like an actual like bass part that I could like emulate. And it's funny because as a bass player, albeit a very like, you know, middle of the road one, I still know when you're going to do things. So like on a lot of the songs when I would do like, you know, like a double tap or a triplet on the kick or like whatever, it's like it coincided with what you were doing without us even planning it.
That's that magic of playing with other good musicians when you connect. I can only think of that as a spiritual level because like I'm not classically trained, so I don't know if that's just how music is written. But like when you're playing, I know where the drums are going to go on something we're just jamming. We've never talked about or thought of, and vice versa. Like you just feel where it's going to go, and when you're locked in, you're locked in.
Absolutely,
it's insane.
And sometimes we would play songs with each other and. A lot of them were just jams, right?
Yeah.
But we would. It's
because
like
none of us were writers,
right? All three of us know exactly like where to change or where to slow down or where to end. Like, you know. But after working together,
almost
for
like
so
we
long,
lucked into all of our songs.
Yeah.
Because none of us are writers or good at we're not musicians. And Jay and I would jam on a part, and then Guy would fill it in. And we just managed to get lucky like 30 times.
Yeah, I mean, like some of the songs we used, like of mine, were either like ones I wrote with Brett.
Yeah.
Who was like a 5-year-old kid who I gave drum lessons to.
Yeah.
Or they were just some of the songs that I had written on my own and never like did anything with.
Yeah. Some of those are still my favorite too. Like that's what I was saying earlier too about always looking forward. Like when we were playing, because we had Jillian with us for a short while also, because I used to play with Jillian Johnson. Man, and she was incredible. And I always wanted a female vocalist. That didn't pan out, but for that little while we were doing that, we got some cool recordings.
Yeah, and we stole one of her songs too. Sorry, Jillian.
We did steal one of her songs. Yeah. She doesn't know that yet.
Yeah,
so, surprise.
Yeah. Hey. But no, she wrote some cool songs, and it was cool because we were all a little different.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm more, like you said, kind of just like straightforward, like rock. She had kind of more of that like kind of indie buzz.
So indie it hurts.
You know, so indie it hurts.
I love you, Jill, but so indie it hurts.
You know, you had like a very like, you know, you weren't just like, there's bass players and there's bass players. Right. Do you know what I mean? Sure. You're more like in the lines of like Geddy Lee or like Les Claypool. Like you're actually playing the bass.
Yeah.
Or like the guy from Muse, like, you know, I mean, they're kind of a commercial band and everything, but his bass lines are anything but bass lines.
Yeah.
They're lead parts.
Well, it's a lot of that stuff goes under the radar until you're really paying attention to it. Like, even something as simple as You Ought to Know by Alanis Morissette is such an iconic song. Listen to the bass line. Holy shit. The bass line is insane. Also, Flea does the bass line on the album. And
really?
Yeah. And it is ridiculous. And when you listen to it, you'll be like, there's no reason the bass line has to be this.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's funny you say that because, like, sometimes until you hear, you know, another person who goes sometimes unnoticed is Nirvana. When Butch Vig released some of the stuff of him, like, stripping down the Nirvana tracks to show, like, again, how Chris Novoselic and Dave Grohl locked in together. Some of Chris's bass lines were, like, really great.
Yeah.
But they, you know, they were there. I'm not saying they were buried in the mix, but your focus is on Kurt's voice and like the overall tone of the song.
Well, there's an important lesson you hope all musicians learn is that any asshole can play flashy and you can learn to do all these crazy things, but you have to play for the song.
Serve the song.
Exactly.
Dude, that's why I love Dave Grohl, man. Like, he was talking about Nevermind, and he was like, I didn't do a whole bunch of fills. I didn't do, like, I kept it really simple. Right. Like, and that's exactly right. I think that's why it
feels big.
Yeah, dude, I mean, you think about some of the most iconic bands in the world, and two of them being one of the ones we just talked about. I mean, Nirvana, the Beatles, right?
Yeah.
We could, whether you like them or not, the argument can be made that both of them in their own right had a big impact on changing music.
Sure.
And when you listen to the songs, they're not complex. They're very easy to play.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? I mean, you got bands like Dream Theater.
Sure.
By all means, they're successful and stuff, but like, that's some complex shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't necessarily mean that it's better than, I mean, like, some of the best songs are 3 chords.
Right. Yeah.
And like super simple to play.
A lot of songs, I listen to a lot of punk rock. Some of them are only a minute long.
Yeah.
And they're like my favorite songs of all time.
Absolutely.
Which is, that's why I like it as art.
Yeah.
Because there's no rules. And that's one of the things I like about it is like there's a space for so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
And all of it can be incredible in just what it is.
Yeah. Have you noticed one thing I wanted to bring up with music? You know, I watch a lot of YouTube. For whatever reason, I can't seem to focus on like TV or movies anymore.
Yeah.
So YouTube for me is like, it's short.
Yeah.
I can jump from one thing to the other. And I also watch, like, I try and have it serve as more of an educational than an entertainment thing. Like don't judge me. Like, I'll watch, like, I've become fascinated with aviation.
Yeah.
Sometimes like Harvard posts class on like quantum mechanics and I'll watch it for like 30 minutes.
I get lost in quantum mechanics all day.
Like it's fascinating, and I'm not sitting here saying that I understand it, but like it's just fascinating to like just listen to, and you're like, wow, there's some crazy shit out there to learn. But you know, one of the things that I like to do is like watch live performances and bands, and I've noticed a lot of, they're not all, but I've never been a huge Metallica fan, never seen them live, but I can say, based on the footage that's they're sounding almost better than ever.
Yeah.
And they're like 60.
That's true. Yeah.
There was a lot of bands who are older now seem to be sounding better than they've ever sounded.
Yeah.
I
think it's I presume because you know what works and doesn't work anymore, right? And when you're young, it's a little raw, a little sloppier.
Yeah, they
also
probably
you got to
appreciate
figure
it more.
you probably were less sober.
Yeah, true story.
And now you're probably a lot cleaner. You're focused on the performance, not the lifestyle.
Yeah, and you know it might be too that they're like really relishing in the fact that they're the last of a dying breed. I mean, you know, I don't follow sports all that much, but like you look at football and like you look at like, for the last 20 years, there's been like these like, you know, Drew Brees and Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and Phillip Rivers, like Ben Roethlisberger. They're all gone with the exception of one. Like it's at the end of an era. And the same thing is kind of happening in the movies. Like the Brad Pitts and Tom Cruises are getting older. The Metallicas and AC/DCs and like are getting. And I honestly think it's the start of a new era in the sense that I don't know that those stadium selling big bands are gonna exist again. Everything seems so much more short-lived. Like you're huge for a while.
I welcome it.
I welcome it
because I hate stadium shows. Just because watching them is fine because the sound is great.
Right.
There's not good.
Well, I don't like stadium shows either. I'm just saying like the idea, like. I don't understand the whole like Taylor Swift thing. Like no disrespect, like dude, she's.
I understand it in the sense that
rich.
people are willing to pay money for it, and good on them. They enjoy it. Awesome.
But my question is, I'll be curious to see where it's at in 20 years.
I think it'll be the same because 20 years ago, you could just plug in a different name, Pink or Lady Gaga or Britney Spears, New Kids on the Block, if you want to keep going back. There's always going to be stadium shows.
Yeah.
But I think rock bands will not be the selling point anymore.
No.
Because I think that's going away.
That's going away.
But I also, to an extent, I feel like that's a double-edged sword because to me it makes sense for pop stars because they have to, it's more universal. So they need this big area. Also, it's a show.
It's entertainment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, the shitty sound that I might complain about doesn't necessarily matter.
Right.
When you spend $50 to sit up in the nosebleeds and can barely see anybody, like, you're still a part of the experience. Mm-hmm. I've done that with, like, WrestleMania shows or wrestling shows. it's still amazing to be there.
Yeah, you're there for the experience.
But when I go to a show, I want to be right up next to, like, Reggie's is one of my favorite places.
Yeah.
We played Reggie's a couple times, but like when you're getting sweat on by the lead singer and like you're right there and you're in it, I gotta think that that's more of what the artistry is going back to.
Yeah.
Because you don't see, even the contracts are different now. You're not necessarily signing X amount of albums to X label because everybody can do everything themselves now, or you're selling an album already done and be like, hey, do you just for distribution?
Yeah.
So you don't have all the contract stuff behind the scenes where it's like, here's where you're going to play. We're booking your shows. This is where you're going to go. This is what it costs for them to book you. And here's an advance on money to get there. Now it's you. Everything is already done pre-hand. And I feel like you have more hands, or your own hands in it. And I think that's I hope it's a better thing. I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, to your point, I would much rather see, if I had my choice to see one of my favorite bands, it would be like the Vic or the Riv or the Metro versus, even if I had a good seat versus Soldier Field or United Center or something like that.
Well, all those places you said don't even have seats. That's why they're awesome.
Right. It's more about, the experience of it. But there's a definite distinguish between, I don't want to say that an entertainer isn't an artist, but there's the artist and there's the entertainer, right? I'm not saying they're separate and they can't have qualities of each other, but one person's job is like the rock band is getting up there with their instruments and just playing. It's got very little to do with what they're wearing, the lights, the show. I mean, some of them put on a show, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas, like if you go and see Dredge live, nothing fancy about it, but it is fancy because the fucking artistry of their musicianship is awesome.
Right, and you can taste the pretension
but
in the air.
When somebody like Taylor Swift or whoever goes up, not to say that it wouldn't work, but if she went into Soldier Field and just went on stage with a guitar, I'm sure people would still love it, and that was it.
Right.
It wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
Because it's the show.
She had to pull a John Mayer where he opened for himself with an acoustic set.
Yes. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where things go. It's like, these days, though, everybody listens to songs, not albums.
Right. Which, again, same thing. Like, it's so streamlined to what your experience that you want. And I like the pageantry of a Taylor Swift or any pop musician. I genuinely love Pink. Just in general, she's amazing.
Yeah, no, she's a cool person.
Plus, she does stuff with Dallas Green, who I also love. If you haven't heard that stuff, it's so good.
Shoot me a text. I'd love to check it out.
But they're even something like, I love the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and even them, they're a stadium band.
Yeah.
And like the tickets, shitty tickets are $1,000.
That's crazy.
And like that is insane to think about. Like I've seen them at Lollapalooza, or not Lollapalooza. I've seen them on their own tour before at the place where they have Lollapalooza, and it was like $30. Not even for launch seats, just for actual seats.
Speaking of Alanis Morissette, she's playing at I want to say it's like the DuPage County Fair.
Yeah, that's
something,
awesome.
and it's like $95 though.
That's insane, but like I think there's probably value there.
Right, it's going to be more intimate for sure.
Yeah, and to see somebody because I feel like stereotypically when you hear about people at a state fair, your first thought is like, oh, I guess they're done. Stereotypically.
Sure, yeah.
But realistically, I think that's amazing.
Well, what most people don't realize is for the artist, it's actually better.
Yeah.
It's probably more profitable. The
Probably.
revenue might be less, but the profit's greater because it's not, well, first of all, you're not paying the fees at a place like the United Center for all the staff and police to do the parking and
but usually the company that backs you is paying all that. It's coming out of your bottom line.
Yeah, but I mean, you play just like a fair or something. I mean, there's a lot less overhead involved, and it's it's easier to get in, get out. Not as much logistics involved with it, but. Yeah, it's interesting because like music, there's so much music out there, man. Like I don't know what you use. A lot of people use Spotify. I use YouTube Music, but they're all generally the same. They have built-in AI that tracks your listening habits and like suggests stuff to you, and it's almost overwhelming like how much stuff there is out there.
It is. I love it too because I have eccentric tastes. Like I listen to so many different things, so I feel like my AI robot is like spending a lot of time crying, or he's excited because whatever I throw at this dickhead, he's gonna love. So, but I agree. There's so much. I use Amazon Music just because I'm a Prime member, so it's cheaper.
Yeah, I have that too.
Yeah, it's all the
so
same thing.
what? Give me one as of late that's been kind of like when you found yourself really getting into.
There's a band called Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.
Okay.
And they're the most incredible thing I've ever heard.
I will check it out.
Buddy plays like a 1914 guitar. It's got no electronics in it. It's just this old guitar. His wife plays the washboard, and they have a drummer. And he's got it tuned, and he plays a particular style where he's bass lining with the top two strings and then playing the guitar. He does a picking style that he's giving you a bass line and the guitar on one instrument, and it is insane. And they're the like happiest, funnest songs that you've ever heard.
You have to text that to me. That sounds awesome.
I wish I could play it on the show just because, like, everybody go listen to Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.
Like, while I love the AI, the stuff that it suggests you, unfortunately, what ends up happening is you got to get like the same color in different shades. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't.
That's where it gets frustrating for me too, is because I have eclectic taste. I don't want to just hear the same kind of
right.
thing.
It's like, oh, here's a band that sounds like the band you just listened to. Like, I get what it's doing, and I like it. There's this one band that's, I guess you consider it like punk rock. They're called Radkey. It's three brothers, and like it's super simple. But then there's been like a lot of like other stuff that I've been listening to. Like I like Metric, and there was some other band with like a girl lead singer. Because like I like you, I was always like into like whether it was a girl like the Subways with the girl bass player. It was a big reason I like the Pixies because Kim Deal like was a big part of it. Even the Pumpkins obviously had like the girl bass player, but. Yeah,
White Zombie.
Yeah, there's so much. R.I.P. her and R.I.P.
She passed away. Sean, you still passed away?
Wait, who'd you say again?
White Zombie?
I'm sorry, I'm thinking Cranberries.
Oh yeah, Dolores passed away.
You said White Zombie. I went to Zombie.
Yeah. There's a correlation there.
Yeah, you like that? It's because Sinead O'Connor just passed away.
Yeah, that was real unfortunate because I didn't realize her son just passed away.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, man, it just goes to show you, like, you could have fame and
nobody's
success
immune.
And not at all.
And nothing is bringing happiness outside of yourself.
Yep.
Like,
and change is like the big, like we were talking about like aging earlier and stuff, and like, you know, for the first time ever, my dad, like I've noticed he's aged.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so for years he was pretty much dad.
Right.
He was the same. Yeah, maybe his hair was a little grayer, maybe his pot belly was a little bigger, but like, he was dad. But like for the first time, it's like, wow, I'm really noticing like him slowing down or changing. It's like it's crazy, like how like you kind of just think they're like untouchable and like invincible. And nothing's gonna happen. And
there's definitely usually like a notice though where you're like, oh, okay, this is an old person now.
Yeah, it's weird. You know, because with my mom, like it was way different. My mom had MS and diabetes since she was 40.
Right.
So like in my head, I had been mentally preparing for years, accepting the fact that she's not going to live till she's 80 or 90. Right. You know, it is what it is, and made the best of it. So like when it did happen, like it was very peaceful and kind of almost what I had hoped / expected.
Yeah.
Of course, not what I wanted, but
sure.
But you know, but I think unfortunately it's a big reason why my dad is aging the way he is, because like he used to be like his like purpose, like he was her caregiver, and it kept him young and like active and everything like that.
So
and
like,
like
nothing to do now.
Yeah, and like when you're retired, you think retirement is like but man, it's when you have things to do, but they're not anything that you have to do.
Yeah.
It's a totally different ball game.
That's true. And I love being lazy.
You know, like my kids are at camp right now.
Yeah.
They got this opportunity to go to this camp for 6 weeks, technology free. They have no phones. They're horseback riding, learning how to play drums, water skiing, doing all this stuff. And, you know, I have all the time in the world to like get stuff done. And same thing. It's like I'm finding myself being like, well, they're gone for 6 weeks. I'll do it next week.
Yeah.
And then that week goes, and you're like, well, I still got 5 more. And then, like, before you know it,
So
you're
you're
like,
nice and stressed in your last week.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, luckily, in hindsight, I really don't have that much I have to get done because, like, obviously, like, I rent, which I didn't think I would ever like to do, but I love it, especially with traveling for work.
I'm a rare person. After owning a house also, I like the idea of renting.
Yeah.
Like, I understand it's not for everybody. And
right. And the financial implications, I understand the arguments people could make about that. But, like, at the end of the day, I watched a lot of my friends who the majority of them are homeowners. And, like, honestly, like, it gives me anxiety because it's like they talk about having to get, like, their driveway resealed and, like, their lawn treated. I'm like, ugh.
Or the AC goes out or the heater. Like, all these big things.
So many other things I'd rather, like, focus my time on.
Yeah. I like the idea of just being able to, like, pick up the phone and be like, hey, come fix your place.
Yeah, exactly. But it's I think it's a matter of finding the right place because you could definitely get in a situation where you rent and you get totally screwed.
Absolutely, that's true. I mean, we're out in the middle of Naperville right now. I don't even want to know what a place like this runs.
Yeah, it's not. It's it's not cheap, but when people try to make the argument of like, well, you could own a place for what you're paying. It's like, well, I would have to put down like $85,000 in order to get to my payment to that. So it's like, and $85,000 is like
also
5
tell me
years
about the taxes.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Are you counting the taxes that they charge around here? Because I don't have to pay that. Like it's all worked into the same price.
Yeah, which makes sense. So speaking of aging, and you just mentioned your kids, let's talk about your little family.
Yes.
So, as I'd already alluded to, I was at your wedding.
Yes, sir.
Where you did a dance routine.
I did.
Because your ex-wife is an amazing dancer. Actually, she's an amazing person. I don't have anything. I haven't talked to her in forever, but she's awesome.
Yeah, she's a big reason the girls are at the camp right now. So
yeah, but life is life, and you had mentioned something to me years and years ago, probably when your kids were, or when your daughter was born. It was after you guys had gotten divorced, about just how you feel like you got what you were looking for in a family. And it was something that hit me hard because I'm not anti-family, or I'm not anti-marriage, and I'm not anti-kids. It's just not a thing for me.
Sure.
Just for whatever reason, mostly being a horrible person. But wow. How has that changed everything? Because you've always been on your own.
Yeah.
Like, I never even knew you had a girlfriend in the time I've known you, because it's just like, it never comes up or anything. I don't feel like you're a private person per se. You just don't talk about yourself.
Yeah.
Unless somebody asks. No,
I mean, when when you and I, before we started doing this, and we were talking about, the kids, and like how I kind of said to you like years ago, where there's people who are married and choose not to have kids. Sure. And I respect that. Yeah. I was just talking to a guy yesterday about it, and like there's who is it, Seth Rogen, famously like had an interview recently where he talked about not having kids, and people, I want to say people attack him, but like I don't think he comes off as the kind of guy who's sitting there being like, I don't have kids and it's the greatest thing ever, you idiots who have kids.
Right.
But for whatever reason, people like are like, oh, that's selfish, or like whatever, and I'm like, well, that's stupid. Sure. Now at the same time, I found myself in a position where like I almost like the dad role more than any other role. Like, so it's kind of like the polar opposite, but not to say that every parent is different, right? Yeah. There's dads and or moms who like are married to their careers and they're doing it for good reason. They're building a nest egg for their kids or a college fund. Absolutely. And like they're making a better life for their family. I'm a very like engaged like parent. Like I like,
kind of goes back to what we're talking about, your life work balance in general is on purpose to be able to be engaging. And stuff like that. I
like and I got 2 girls, so like it's not like I have 2 sons who I'm like playing like football with or anything like that. But like,
I mean, one of them does have an electronic drum.
We do have the drum set upstairs because she's been playing. But growing up when they were younger, like I was all about going to the American Girl doll store. Yeah, I was all about voicing Barbies for them or like voicing dolls for them because like you have even when they were younger, and you get warnings from people like, "Oh man, you're about to have a kid. Like, good luck. Say goodbye to sleep." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay."
Even when I hear that, I'm always like, it's what you want to put into it.
Yeah.
And how you deal or how you feel about what's happening to you.
Yeah. And I kind of try to make myself a promise from the start. It's like, okay, you got basically one shot at this. Yeah. Like, you got these kids and they're going to grow up and then that's it. Right. So even like back in the day, like, because Lucy, my youngest, man, we used to call her loud face. She would just cry and like, no reason, we had her checked out, like whatever. And I'd be at Walmart, she'd be screaming, and like, I could have gotten stressed out and like ran out of the store and like, but I kind of just, I didn't just let her scream and like let her like piss people off. But at the same time, I took it with a grain of salt because I knew that in some weird way, there was going to be a day where I was actually going to miss it.
Sure.
Yeah. Nobody likes changing the diaper, but I knew one day I was almost going to miss it.
Yeah.
Like,
that's an incredible mindset, though, that I feel like is overlooked. That genuine gratitude of like knowing what you're getting is a gift while you're getting it, because most of that is all retrospect, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, all of a sudden she's 10 and you're never going to change a diaper again, and you just realized it.
Yeah.
You knew it when she was a baby. Yeah. Like, this is going to go away eventually.
It's going to go away, and when we talk about like cliches and stuff like that, like generally, like, I'm not saying I'm against them, but there's one that I used to hear that couldn't be further from the truth, and it's they grow up so fast.
Yeah.
And my God, dude, like right now they're both at camp. They're 13 and 10, and like, the 13-year-old like is starting to have boyfriends and like, and it was like, it literally feels like 2 years ago, like they were 6 and 4 or 3, whatever. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it passes by so fast. So I'm doing my absolute best to be in the moment and, like, enjoy it. Now, it was hard to let them go to this camp, but, again, their mom had an opportunity for them to go, basically for free because it's, like, $13,000 per kid. Like,
wow.
It's a beautiful place, and it's like I couldn't pass that up. But for them to get that experience,
cool experience,
dude. They're on the border of Canada and upstate New York. It's beautiful.
That is awesome.
I dropped them off, and I don't talk to them because they're technology free, which I think at the end of the day is good. They needed a break from that stuff.
Yeah.
No complaints from them, but I see pictures that are uploaded every day, and like, it's awesome, man. And like, there's going to be a day where I'm not going to have them anymore. Well, I'm trying to develop that relationship to where even when they are older and they have their own lives and their boyfriends or husbands or whatever, like, I'm still going to matter to them and like be a part of their life. And, I try to make time for me. Like, I have people in my life right now outside of my kids who are really important to me that I spend time with and, play a big role in my life. But my goal after the divorce was always like, I'm just going to put the focus on them and getting them in the right direction. And then,
did you have a similar kind of moment with wanting to co-parent as well?
Yeah, we do. I'm super grateful that like we're able to do it the way we do it. Where I hate to use the word unconventional because in my mind this is the way it should be.
Right. Yeah, co-parenting should exist. Like, some things don't work out, and for some reason, we always think that there's a negative connotation.
No,
and there shouldn't be. Like,
I get along with her
aside
family.
from like a shitty situation that clearly is
right.
Bad.
There's people who have been through things and put things through.
But when you can amicably be like, hey, this isn't working out for whatever reason. We don't have to pretend. I still like you as a person.
Yeah.
Let's raise these kids still.
We live close to each other. It's very, like I said, don't like use the word, but unconventional. Like, we don't follow, like, I could tell you one thing: I was never going to be the every other weekend dad.
Right.
It was never going to happen, and she knew that. And we don't really follow schedule or whatever per se. It's like if I've got to travel for work or I got something that comes up that I want to do or whatever, she has them. If she's got something on, she's got to work, has something, I have them. And
it's almost like honest communication helps.
So people should try it.
Yeah.
And it's better than the alternative. And it's also my dad loves being with them, and like obviously having family around is always helpful.
Sure. And
it's filled a big void in his life because after losing my mom, like he loves having them around, and it works for everybody, man. Like, but whatever path anybody chooses, like I try and do my best to like respect it, and like you never know what somebody else is going through or like why somebody makes a choice. Like maybe people aren't having kids because they physically can't. Maybe people aren't having them because they just don't want them.
Right. Fair enough.
And that's cool as long as those same people don't like try and make it sound like their situation is superior to yours.
Well, everybody wants to gatekeep something, right?
Right, and I don't understand why people do that, but some people are just assholes.
Some people suck.
Some people do suck.
That is a motto that
you
I
don't
think
suck.
More people. I try not to.
You don't suck.
I mean, there's probably sucky things about me.
There's a difference, though. Like either like.
I don't suck. I'm sucky.
You could be a dick, but you're not a dick. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a huge difference.
I'm not 100% an asshole.
No, not even close. Are you going to do one of these with Randy?
I would like to.
I think you should, Randy.
Yeah.
Do it.
Randy.
Guy, you can do it with a guy. I enjoyed your one with Jay. I enjoyed your one with Katie. I think it's awesome, man. I'm glad you're doing this. I think it's good for you too because like. You always like to converse.
Yeah,
that's
I'm a talker.
That's what I liked about you. Like me and you always had like found things that like quite honestly, me and you could probably do like 10 of these. And like
we could have our. I would love to. We'd have our own show.
We could have our own show, dude.
Yeah.
Like we could talk about because like honest to God, like we could go on a whole tangent about movies.
That's true. Because I do love pop culture stuff like comic books and movies and music, but I don't want it to be part of this show.
Right.
Other than like a casual graze. But I would love to have a focused show of like if we were going to do it, I'd be like, all right, let's come up with 6 episodes.
Yeah.
And we'll each bring an album and we'll do 6 episodes where I'll talk about an album, you'll talk about an album, and then we'll kind of dissect those over 6 episodes to just see how that feels.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be so awesome.
That'd be super awesome.
Yeah. Well, this right here was the birth of that.
It was. So remember that people, when we're like, few years from now and we have like this huge podcast, like you were part of the
I think that part of that though too is because like I have an idea. If you listen to the episode I did with Annie, my friend Annie, at the end of it we talk about doing our own show as well, and that's what I want. I want to build an empire of Empirical Peapod and have a bunch of shows under that banner by various people, or myself, like whatever I'm interested in as well. And kind of like just take over the world that way. Mm-hmm. Because realistically, I think everything's going to have a shelf date. Like this idea was the kickoff, and I love this idea of talking to my friends, getting close to my friends, and maintaining these relationships and having honest, free conversations. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that that's a forever kind of show.
No.
To whereas there's a lot of other ideas. And as I get better at this as well, hopefully.
But you're approaching this in a very smart business sense because if you go back like to when like the entrepreneur thing was becoming a big thing in like the 80s and 90s, it was always like if you're really going to be successful, you're supposed to have multiple streams of. At the time, it was income.
Yeah.
But they're now applying that to like if you go to like a successful YouTuber, like whether it's who's that dude, Mr. Beast or whatever.
Yeah.
He doesn't have one channel.
No.
He has like 5.
Yeah.
And each one of those is tailored to a specific audience.
Right. And that's where it gets too far in the weeds for me personally. I don't, because it's one of the things too is I'm at a point now where it's like the show's been successful enough in its first month where I've been offered an ad campaign and I can monetize and stuff now finally, which usually takes 60 days. Mm-hmm. And I did it in 30. But at the same time, I need to grow the audience outside of my friends listening, and that's what I don't like. I have to do the SEO. I'd have to start focusing ads. I'd have to start marketing and start really like on purpose tailoring things. And I don't want to do that because at least this main show, the crux of it is the exact opposite of all of that.
Yeah,
and that's where I'm like torn. I'm like, all right. what am I going to do and what do I realistically want out of this, right?
Do you think people know how sexy we look versus sound? Like, do they know we're sitting in a room that's currently 80 degrees because we cut the air conditioning off to keep the background noise down, and like we sound like we're in like a nice cool room, but in reality like we're both sweating and like you know, total swamp ass, and just sitting here like talking like we're king shit. Like, I love it. Now, before I know we're going over time, which is a good sign because like I feel like we've been talking for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
which is
it's
awesome,
been almost an hour and a half.
Yeah, which is crazy.
It is.
But if you don't recall, two things really quick before we sign off. One, I think one day it would be absolutely fantastic if me, you, and the boys from AP could do like a discussion about like even just recording the album.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would be super cool to kind of like bring that stuff back up. And then also, I'm not even kidding you. So you guys have like a following at Jefferson Junior High in Naperville. Like, your music is played. It's on TikTok videos. Like,
that's crazy.
Yes. So I am not shitting you. For her 16th birthday, which is only about 2.5 years away, she would absolutely love for us to play a show. So Randy, Jay, like, get your shit together. Like, start relearning the songs. Me, you, and Guy could like rehearse it. How fun would that be?
I think it would be super fun. I think it would be hard for me personally. Like, you see, even when we jam and you guys want to jam the old songs, they're just not in there anymore.
Yeah. Well, we'll get them out of you.
It's not because you can listen to it and be like, here's what you're playing, or at least close enough where I'm like, I remember what I was doing.
They're a bunch of 16-years. They're not going to know the difference.
That's true.
Yeah.
We'll just go in there and do a bunch of covers.
It'll be fantastic. I'll be like 50 by the time. It'll be fantastic.
Oh, that's sad because you'll be so close to 50.
I really will be. Yeah, maybe it's not such a great idea.
I don't know. I think we'll still do it again. I think I still got at least one more run in me. I think it's just a matter of, right now, it's literally just our schedules not lining up.
Yeah.
For me, you, and Guy, at least.
I think sometimes you just need a reason. You know, I have a guitar that you can see over there in the corner, and had my daughter not been ecstatically writing me from camp saying how she learned the drums, she played a freaking Muse cover in front of the entire camp.
That's awesome.
You know, so I went out, I got like which, by the way, like, electronic drum sets are so affordable now, and I got the one upstairs, and dude, I've been banging away on it for the last like 5 days. Yeah. You know, and I feel like I should have been doing that for the last 5 years, but it just took me that one little reason to do it. So sometimes you just need it. I'm telling you, stuff would come back to you.
I think that's true. Well, plus I've also left it and come back a lot. It's just at the moment not a focus, and it's only because since I work in Batavia, I live in DeKalb. Our gear's in Yorkville. Like, doing it on a Monday is just, I can't drive from, I mean, I can, but DeKalb to Batavia to Yorkville back to DeKalb is a triangle of every Monday that sucks.
Yeah.
Like, if it was on Friday, if that ever lines back up, because Friday usually I go to my sister's in Plano anyways, and she lives literally right by Guy.
Oh, okay.
Like, I could practically see Guy's house.
Yeah. Well, watch. We'll set that up, and then Guy will be like, "Oh, I didn't tell you I'm moving." I'm like, "Of course."
He is eventually gonna move.
He is gonna move. God knows this show. It's just gonna be me and you, some like a Pro Tools backing track with
it's
like
gonna be
Randy's
you and me and a bunch of the junior high kids.
That'd be great.
We're just gonna be the old guys teaching the kids.
Hopefully, we're not as sweaty as we are now.
We're gonna be.
We will.
I work in a junior high. I'm always sweaty and gross.
We'll be like sweating in March.
Yeah, I love it when the kids are like, why are you sweating? I'm like,
because I do,
I'm
right?
fat and it's hot. Yeah. That's probably a good spot then.
Yeah.
We'll end it on
good sweaty foreheads and stuff.
Yeah.
We'll go wipe ourselves off with some paper towels. Well, man, I'm super stoked that I kind of feel like I invited myself to do this a little bit because
a few people hit me up afterwards and were like, I'll do an episode.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, will you?
Like, I heard, your one with Jay was great and everything, but like honestly, your one with your friend Katie really is the one that got me. Not that I didn't think that, it's one thing to hear you and Jay converse because I've heard it before.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're friends.
Sure.
But I don't know this woman, girl, but, and I know you guys are friends, but like, it's just, you led a really good conversation and like, it was just.
I feel lucky for that was the first episode just because, I absolutely adore Katie and her and I are like family close. Mm-hmm. So like, it was so easy if that wouldn't have been my experience, I don't know if I would have kept going.
Yeah.
Because her and I could do that. Like, we've had conversations on the phone for like 8 hours.
Sure.
Where it's just, like, her and I could have our own show and really get lost in the weeds.
Yeah.
And we would absolutely love it. And I feel like listening to us talk, like, I don't really listen to the episodes, but something about Katie's voice even is just so inviting and, like, I don't know how to describe it. It just it's just interesting to listen to her talk.
I was, and again, like with the you and Jay one, I listened to the whole thing and everything, but like with the you and Katie one, like I forgot that I was listening to a podcast of somebody I know. Yeah. I felt like I was listening to just a podcast that I was genuinely like interested in hearing.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And I would put a lot of that on her just because she's amazing.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. So once I heard that, I'm like, you know, I'm gonna text this dude and just be like, "Hey, man, if you want someone really interesting to talk to."
I have a notebook in my little carrying case here.
Was I really though?
100%.
Awesome.
Yeah, everybody I knew is a couple have come up organically, but otherwise, I've miraculously stuck to the plan. Which is the whole. I've never had a plan and then executed it.
I love. So the great thing is for those of you listening, when he got here, I thought I was going to be running behind a little bit, but I got here a few minutes before him, and he said, "Well, he's like, I'm one of two things. I'm either early or I don't show up."
Yeah, those are my two modes.
Which is great. There's not on time. There's not a little bit late. It's either early or not at all.
Like, yeah, I'm always like 15 to 30 minutes early, or I'm not coming.
I love it.
I don't bother anybody. I sit in my car and just a lot of it too is like now that I've started doing these, I get anxiety before each one. Yeah. Because like before it wasn't a thing, but now there's some out and people are listening to them, and I'm like, oh Christ, I don't prepare.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you don't. And also, you know, for anyone else who might do this, like to your point about like, you know, having a studio and like, you know, fancy mics with headphones and all that, like. It turns it into like too much of a formality, and like you realize you're being recorded. I love him, and I are just sitting here on my couch with microphones clipped to our shirts that I haven't even noticed this entire time. Right. Yeah. And we're just shooting the shit and having a conversation. Yeah. And it makes
it's not invasive whatsoever. And that was the goal, is to keep it as convo focused as possible.
I love it, dude.
I love it too.
Thanks for coming, man.
I appreciate you finding the time, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, dude. I look forward to doing it again.
I can't wait to do it. We can't wait till we start our own show.
It'll be epic. Remember, you heard it here first. We're gonna go clean up our sweat.
Yeah, finally.